I've got to say that even when you've gone from such a structured life, especially if you've got kids, especially if you have had a career or both, it is terrifying to all of a sudden realize you have the freedom to choose yourself.
Yeah.
Now, if my 40-year-old self had heard that, she'd be like, what are you talking about? Terrifying? I just want to go to the bathroom by myself. But there is something terrifying about hitting the moment and realizing that now you get to choose you. How do we help women go from that place of constantly giving themselves away, constantly people pleasing, constantly doing what's for everybody else, and then making a 180-degree shift into what do I do? That transition is a very circuitous one, and I believe much of your book can help us with that. How do we make that transition?
Well, I think about the way that I've cared. I have 3 children as well. The way that I care for my children and the way that I thought I don't want to control what they do. I want to guide them to explore to their best path. It's the same thing in the way that we talk to ourselves is, you know, you don't have to control yourself and say you have to fit into some kind of box after 50 or, you know, I have to play between the lines. I mean, I feel like after 50 is when you get to color outside the lines and kind of see what feels right and feels good. And so I think the first step to doing that is to figure out not just what it is you want to do, but why you want to do it. Because I think that motivation is so important. If you want to do it to prove somebody else wrong or, you know, to get noticed by somebody, those are all motivations that don't work. They're external motivations. But if you can really pinpoint why you want to make this new step, new change, then I think you've really got something going. And it can be for any reason. I mean, it can be anything from wanting to leave a bad relationship so you can live more in peace to, you know, working, you know, moving to a little beach town because you want to have a better quality of life and working from home that way. It can be anything you want, but it is about like, why do you want to make the change? For what reason?
And my experience with a lot of women at that transition is we don't know why. And I think part of that is because we've never actually sat with ourselves and asked ourselves. It was never important. Everybody else's opinion, everybody else's needs came in front of our own. And I've told this story before on my podcast here. Last July, I actually hit a moment where I finally sat with myself and asked myself what I wanted to create in my life. And for about a week, and here I am, like I've written books and I've got, you know, a big following and I had an amazing clinic that I closed to keep writing more books. And when I sat with myself for 1 week, asking myself, what do I want? No, you can't think about your spouse. You can't think about your career. You can't think about your kids. Mindy, what do you want? What do you want? I literally came up empty. And it
really
took me
interesting.
Yeah, and it took me some real soul searching because I realized I have spent my whole life thinking and caring for everybody else. And I'd never really trained the neurons in my brain to actually put me first. So is there a strategy before we go into the why you would want to change? How do we even go before that? How do you cultivate this like relationship with yourself? Like, how do you help yourself help yourself? Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, for me, the way that I kind of looked at things, right? Because I've had a career in television for 35 years. I'm still a broadcaster for ESPN, but I wanted to take more control. I wanted to hire myself. That was the thing for me. I wanted to hire myself. I was tired of asking other people. And so I kind of made, and it's in the book too, an inverted triangle where I put at the top, what do I love to do? Like, what do I really enjoy? And then like from that, I made it like kind of like a filter. I called this funnel. And then the next thing was like, what am I good at? And it goes along with the Ikigai principles, right? What does the world need and what can I get paid for? And it was interesting to me to kind of see what would bring me joy. Like, what does bring me joy? And I'm right with you. Like, friend group. What friend group? Right? I got I got my text friends and the parents of my friends on their sporting teams.
Yes.
But like, I wasn't nurturing like my own friend group.
Yes.
And I thought, I need to nurture that a little bit. How do I plug that in? My life is so busy. So it's about like asking yourself continuously. And it sounds like you did this, like, what actually brings me joy? And what do I want to have more of in my life? In any way, whether it's relationships with girlfriends, whether it is travel, whatever it is kind of tapping into like, what brings me joy? What makes me happy?
Yeah.
And then seeing from there is like the seed of what your next move is.
Got it. Okay. And what would you say to the people, and this wasn't me, but to the people that are like, well, I really, what brought me joy was being needed. I was needed by my children. I was needed by, I was the ultimate soccer mom that brought the snacks, and I was needed, and now I'm not needed. That people-pleasing part of women sometimes overrides us so much that we actually have this sort of toxic relationship with people needing us. What happens if that's what brought me joy, and now I'm asking myself, well, what brings me joy now? And it's like, well, I need to be needed, but all the people that needed you are gone.
Yeah, except you need yourself at this point. That's one. And then two, I mean, I feel like everything's a clue, always. So I feel like, okay, if what makes you happy is service-minded, right? Other people needing you, then when you talk about what fills your cup, what kind of service do you want to provide to the world? What kind of service makes you most happy? I mean, if your identity, and I'm with you, this isn't me either, but if your identity is, providing service, feeling needed that way, I think you can build the next step in your life to filling a need for others. It's just not going to be, closely, it just really won't resemble necessarily what it's like to take care of your kids and take care of your family. To me, that feels a lot like you're not necessarily taking care of yourself or paying attention to your own needs. So that's the first question I'd ask somebody who has that response is like, how do you make sure you have what you need to be able to give? Right. Have you really been taking care of yourself that way?
Yeah. It's interesting. I believe there's always a balance. I had Krasno on the podcast, and he just put out a book called Good Stress. And we talked about how there's always a balance of energies within the physiology of the body. But I think what you're talking about there is like, if everybody has needed you, how do you need you? Like, how do you balance yourself back because you've been giving? How do you balance yourself back? So I can see it through that lens in what you're saying.
I wonder too if there's some guilt about needing. Like if something in our mind says like, I shouldn't need anything. I've got everything in the world that I want, a healthy family, whatever it is. And so there's some kind of guilt or shame inside, because I think sometimes the word need, people may think, well, that's selfish.
Yeah.
And, so it's kind of releasing some of the preconceived ideas we have about certain words. Certainly like audacity. There's all kinds of preconceived notions about what audacity is. Cocky. There's a story in the book about how when I was 11, my father said, Anne-Marie, you're getting kind of cocky. Now, my father was my biggest supporter, just always in my front row cheering. One time when I was 11, he said, Anne-Marie, I think you're getting cocky. And I held on to it forever because I had these ideas of what cocky meant. And gosh, I don't want to be cocky. I don't want to, always. And I even let it hold me back in my television career for a while because I didn't want to come off as cocky. Yep. And Mindy, it was only when I was writing this book that I looked up the definition of cocky. And I was so surprised. The definition of cocky is so sure of one's abilities that it annoys other people.
Oh my gosh.
Right?
That's beautiful. I want to be cocky.
I thought it was like you're so sure of your abilities, but you don't actually have any, talent. But I was like, wait a second. So sure of one's abilities. Yes. To your point, especially when you get to like that 50 point. Yeah, I know what I can do. that it annoys other people.
Yeah.
My teenagers would call that OPP, other people's problems. And it just completely released me from that word. So I wonder if the word need also has some degree of selfishness for other people. We should look up that definition of what actually need means.